Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Michael Valentich. How are you today, sir?
Good, and yourself?
I am great. I love having something different. I'm deep in the drag racing Mitsubishi community because, that's what I grew up doing, and that's who most of my friends are. So it's easy to have them on, but it makes it very special to have somebody like you with such a unique Pro 10. So I'm very glad to have you on here.
I appreciate the invite and glad to be here.
So, Michael, let's dive right in. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what you drive?
Yeah, certainly. My name is Mike. I'm with Valentich Motorsports, and currently I pilot a 2015 Evo GSR. I also have a 2014 MR. A lot of people get confused about those two cars. It's not me wrapping one or the other. I do have two Evo 10s. But currently the one that I'm using is the 15 GSR. That's blue. And it's set up for big track racing, for time attack, or as the group that I run with called high speed autocross. And the other one's more set up for like low speed autocross.
Okay. And how does this is completely off topic? How does the MR do with that with the SST?
Well, funny that you mentioned that because the SST gets a lot of hate. I've heard it all about the trans is garbage. It's gonna grenade this and that, and it actually ended up being the motor that grenaded. The car has, I think, 17,000 miles. I bought it new, and we have roughly somewhere in the 2,500 to 3,000 launches on the car. So the car has just been abused since day one. And the engine ended up blowing up before the transmission had any major problems. So, the SST is great. It shifts faster. All the fanboys that will tell you they're not driving a real car unless it's stick. It's a bunch of baloney, in my opinion, because most pro motorsports uses, especially any kind of road racing, uses, some kind of sequentials or dog boxes and such, basically some kind of semi-automatic transmissions.
Well, Mike, what first pulled you into high-speed autocross or time attack racing?
So I started back in 2013 with just low-speed parking lot autocross or solo, or just depending on what part of the country you live in. And it was kind of a cheap way to get into motorsports, kind of catch the bug, so to speak, catch the addiction, and it just kind of took off from there. After the first season, I met some friends, and they kind of egged me on to go out and try a track day, and the rest is basically history. Went out to my first track day in a 98 Honda Civic, and just loved it and started building up from there.
Okay. So Mike, what's the journey from the Honda Civic to the Evo 10?
So the Honda Civic was a great car to begin with. It was very easy to drive, no aids. This one weighed about 1,800 pounds and made close to 300 wheel horsepower NA, revved to like 9,500. Good power to weight ratio. It's not quarter mile car or anything crazy like that. And it was fun. It was like a go-kart and very reliable, cheap to run. You could beat the hell out of it all day long. But and I had good success with it. I don't want to say I didn't. I was winning my classes, winning championships, trophies, driver of the year awards. But I saw some of the big dogs at that time were running, Evos and Subarus and stuff like that. And I think I want to get into the all-wheel drive platform. And so I bit the bullet and got an Evo and never looked back.
Love it. So, can you think back to your first event with the Evo? What was that experience like?
Interesting. It was a learning curve. I ended up buying all the bolt-ons, I ended up first doing the Cobb off the shelf map and all that stuff, and then I had there back in the old days they gave you the race tuner so you could do your own mapping and all that stuff. So I played with that a little bit and just did full bolt-ons, corner balance, alignment, coilover, stuff like that. And the car was fun to drive, but you got a brand new car. Um, the suspension was wrong. It wasn't dialed in. So the first event, sure, I bagged maybe a second place and top 10 finish, but there's quite a lot that needed to be fine-tuned. It wasn't just like, you buy an Evo and you're the fastest guy out there. There's a lot of fine-tuning involved and changing little things. And it took a couple events until we figured out what the car likes and what doesn't work.
Well, Mike, let's talk about what does work. What's the current setup on your Evo? Engine, suspension, aero, all that good stuff.
So it's a pretty basic setup. A lot of people think that every nut and bolt is aftermarket on the car, but it isn't. The big thing that I learned with the Civic is, because that car we just bought literally, you think about the scene in Fast and the Furious where the pickup truck's full of parts. We literally bought every part that you can buy and throw it in the car, and we were just struggling to dial it in. We didn't know if this part's making it do this or that. So now with the Evo, we change little by little. So if I don't like something, I know exactly what it is that I changed, and we can revert back to that. So the engine is built bottom end, different rods, pistons, all that fun stuff, cams, bigger turbo. It's got a Morrison fab tubular manifold, which is a very beautiful piece. AMS downpipe and the limited edition AMS titanium exhaust for weight. 1700 cc injectors, radium surge tank, which is very important if you're going to road race your Evos. I think Exetti twin disc clutch, got some Olin coilovers, I think 12 and 10K. Spring rates, a lot of the bushing, sway bars, all that stuff still stock, still factory. And then as far as aero, we just put a carbon, we built a carbon front splitter, and it's running an APR GTC 300 wing with, I think it's single air end plates. Inside we have a half cage down for the back, full containment seats from Momo, saw belts, and fun stuff like that.
It's awesome. A lot of power and a lot of safety.
Yeah, you have to give the guys that aren't into road racing kind of an idea. At the local track, the car is about half a second than a good friend's Porsche Cup car, and that's a full factory built race car on slicks and full aero, and weighs another 400 to 600 pounds lighter than the Evo. So, pretty happy with running those times on street tires. So, safety is definitely a thing that's often overlooked, and it's not something that I wanted to skip out on.
Sure, definitely understandable there. Well, Mike, the one thing we didn't talk about was ECU and who's tuning it.
So ECU is still stock, believe it or not. I think it's using the Tefra V3, I believe it's called. Devin Schultz from Boosted Performance, aka the guy that everybody you guys know by the pilot of the Red Demon. He's the tuner and the guru behind that. He's tuned it, and the car hasn't skipped a beat. I was kind of worried. We had an event where temperatures were like 34 degrees. But the car performed really flawless, and I have no complaints there. So big thanks to him.
That's certainly no surprise to us.
Yeah, a lot of quick cars that come out of that shop, and Devin definitely knows what he's doing.
For sure. Well, Mike, one thing that I'm most interested in, when you think about the kind of data that drag racers pay attention to, what kind of data are you looking at and collecting for road racing?
So we're not tuning the car. Devin took care of that, so that's one less headache that I don't have to have at every event. So we run a system called an AIM Solo DL2, and their Smarty Cam. So a Smarty Cam is basically an overpriced GoPro that you kind of connect with this data acquisition system. And this thing is really, really fancy. It's kind of an entry level stuff that some of the pro teams use. It's got so many different capabilities that I would honestly need a race engineer to figure out how to use all the features and functions of that. But we're looking just at some basic stuff. We're logging temperatures, and we're looking at we're using GPS to kind of see where we're braking, where we're, what we're doing at what corner. We're looking at entry speed, exit speeds, and of course, we're also running regular GoPros just to kind of see what the car is doing. We're kind of looking at, what your feet are doing. We're looking at what your hands are doing, just little things, because those little things can add up for a 10th here, 10th there. Completely different in drag racing, but if you're doing something wrong with your feet, or you're not doing this or that, and a lot of times when I do some coaching as well and driver mentoring, I see a lot of people are coasting for a split second or half a second. All that stuff adds up in a lap.
Yeah, okay. So, Mike, you talk about saving a tenth here and saving a tenth here. There, what do you think has been the most critical upgrade for shaving those lap times?
I think the biggest thing would be seat time, and I know people, will laugh at that and kind of roll their eyes, but that's the cheapest best way is seat time. When I get people that come out to the track and they're new, I tell them, because I can't ride with everybody, there's not enough time in the day. I usually try to put a GoPro in somebody's car and look at your lines. Let's look at what we can do. Try to improve your positioning of the car and all that stuff. And that's another thing why parking lot or low speed autocross is very important, because most of the people that come from that program, when they go on a big track, they're using the whole width of the track versus people that don't. They're using, they're maybe leaving another foot or two that they could have gone wider and carry more speed and stuff. So it's a big help there. And then once we're done with that, I would say braking compounds, brake pads and such. When the MR was just full on bolt-ons, we ended up switching brake compounds and found 2 seconds, just being able to brake much later and just being more confident in the car.
That's really cool.
Yeah, those are cheap mods. You can go and spend money if you have deep pockets, but unlike drag racing, where you kind of limit it to basically what kind of setup, what motor you have, what kind of power you have. And I'm not saying the driver is not relevant, it is, but in road racing, seat time is going to be your biggest best thing, where you don't have to spend the money other than to go to the events. Just bettering yourself as a driver, kind of like the driver mod that everybody hears people talk about.
Right, everybody always jokes about.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thinking in kind of the opposite direction, have you ever made a quote unquote upgrade and then it just didn't work out? It kind of hurt the performance?
Yeah, there's been different setups we tried. We've tried different coilovers we didn't like. We tried different different things from aero, getting the splitter angle wrong. That can increase drag, believe it or not. Tire pressures being off. It's just a learning curve, and that's why when I do changes now, it's one thing at a time. Because with the Civic, when we put all these parts on at once, we weren't sure what is it that caused it to do this or do that. Now this way, you know exactly what it is, and you can revert and try something else.
Okay. So you spoke on it just a little bit ago, Mike, but I want to elaborate. So whenever you're setting up the car for an event, don't focus so much on the raw power. You focus on the balance. Then, like you said, Devin takes care of pretty much tuning so that you at least know that part's right.
Yeah, correct. So the balance is important in road racing, and so I mean the motor is basically built. It's bulletproof. we could have thrown a bigger turbo on it. We could have thrown a 64, 66 and, made it a dyno queen and made God knows whatever power. But the problem is, you're not looking for that straight line speed. You need a balance of a car that has a really good usable power curve, so that when you're coming through a corner, you're not just waiting, and then the turbo spools up. You need something that's, quickly spooling, but, has enough top end. So kind of like my MR, that has a MHI 18K, it is great for autocross. It spools, and, don't quote me on this, maybe roughly 300 RPM slower than a stock turbo. The GTX, what is it, 3076R that's on the car. That's basically the AMS STX 500 kit, I think. So that spools a lot slower than that. So at autocross, it struggles. You really have to beat on it and go from second gear down to first, and try to get that turbo spooled up, get the revs up. But on a road course, it's much quicker because it's got a lot more top end. It spools pretty decent. Sure, the MHI 18K on the MR spools quicker, but it just doesn't have that top end. So you got to kind of find what works. There is cars that came out there with bigger turbos that are much slower because while my turbo is spooling at the apex, they're not spooling until they're much further out of the corner. Do they make more power in a dyno? Sure, but you just need to find something that's a good balance. And so you're not waiting all day long for that turbo to spool up.
Okay. Well, Mike, let's get down to putting the rubber on the road. What's your go-to tire and wheel setup, or does it depend on what track you're going?
So currently, I have two sets of different wheels. They're both RPF ones. Great, wheels for not crazy amount of money. So if you curb rash them, you go off track, you damage them. They're readily available and they're not going to break the bank. They're both 18 inch, and I think one's 9.5 wide, the other one's 10.5 wide. I bought the 10.5 wides with room to grow. So I do eventually want to try to run a 295 square setup. Car is currently on 275 wide square setup. Bridgestone's RE71 RSs. They're great. The class that I'm currently running requires me to have a street tire, so I'm kind of limited to that. And from trying different brands, it seems like this is the best tire that I like on the Evo. It still lets the car slide out a little bit around, trying to help help the ass end kind of slide out and rotate the car, but not too much. And they seem to be working. They're quicker than the Falcons we used to use, and just a very, very popular car around the paddock when you go to a track day.
Don't doubt that. It definitely is. It's very eye-catching.
Yeah, they're honestly, I've had Hoosiers before, A7s. They're kind of made for sprints or autocross, and they're kind of, there's days where on a slower low speed autocross event where they're I don't know if it's just too greasy or too hot, but I've seen where the Bridgestones are faster than the Hoosiers.
Well, Mike, from the time you unload off the trailer to the time you're about to make that first standing start, how do you mentally prepare for waiting for that first stomp on the gas?
I have a pretty good team with me, so they kind of make it a lot easier on me. I do help get the car unloaded with them. I do also run tech for the organization, so I kind of have to be at two places at once. And they know, the team knows kind of what I like, and they unload the car, get all the gear out, get my fire suit out, and all that fun stuff, so that I can just focus on kind of getting in the zone. And sometimes when I'm at the track, I just people come and approach me, and I don't mean to be rude, but you kind of got your head in the game, and we'll talk at lunchtime or when the event's over, and kind of just you can catch me and kind of look like I'm spacing out, but I'm just kind of in the zone, just kind of going over what I'd like to do and what I want to do. And then once I'm on the grid, it's just kind of like blank noise. You're not really thinking too much of it. You're just kind of waiting, and once you're setting off and out there banging gears. You're just kind of listening and paying attention to what the car's doing, so you can make corrections or whatever is needed.
Well, Mike, can you think back and describe a lap where, or maybe just a series of corners where everything just clicked, going, going in the right direction?
Yeah, sure. I think the first time I got a FTD, which is a fast time of the day of an event, it was in my Evo 10MR, and it was a just a drenched day. It was raining all day long, and still kind of learning the car, and a lot of the people were kind of afraid of because of the rain. Like drag racing would do race in the rain, it's definitely different. So all those lines that I learned, previous events, you basically throw them out the window. When it's raining, your fastest your fastest line through a corner is not the racing line. It's usually off the line where you try to find some of the tire marbles or better grip.
Yeah.
And just at the end of the session, just getting braver and braver. And thanks to the Mitsubishi all-wheel drive system and the Evo, I was able to score my first fast time of the day. And it's one of those things that I definitely did not expect. And at that point in time, that early in the car ownership, and it was definitely great. And then most of the other fast racers were coming over to see what the hell tires I was running, or because they were stomped, they didn't understand how some of like the Audis and Subaru guys got edged out by so much, by multiple seconds by an Evo. So that would probably be one of my favorite laps.
Sounds like a good one. So, Mike, when you're going to a new track for the first time, what's your process for learning your new track and trying to run the best line?
It really depends what the track is and kind of what their rules are. We've gone to tracks where we don't have access to, say, walk the track. So I will go and there's a couple of fast guys who, post their videos and stuff. So I will kind of check out their videos on YouTube just to kind of see what the layout is, what the corners look like, and then I will see what kind of entry speed, exit speeds they're running, and then plus minus depend on what kind of car they have versus mine, just so that instead of going the first session out, if we have 3 sessions for practice, I'm not going the first session out and completely, blind learning a new track, versus I already know kind of which way the corners are going, where roughly to brake, and I can kind of start building up from there. Other tracks where we are allowed to come in, say, a day early, I do go out there and walk the track. I know some guys laugh about that, but there's no shame in that. Even Formula One drivers walk the track. Because you see different things that you don't see in a car when you're attacking a corner at, I don't know, 90, 100 miles an hour, whatever the case might be. You see little dips in the road, bumps, surface change, stuff like that. It's just nice to walk. I would prefer to walk it every time, but certain tracks, that's just not a luxury that we have available to us.
That's interesting. I never considered that when I see, people out there doing the track walk, even whenever like took solo across in the parking lot. You never think like, oh, they're also looking for like dips or cracks in the road or something like that.
Yeah, little things can definitely upset the car. Like the local track here has a little dip that you don't see if it's a road car, but any other cars that are set up on a stiffer suspension, there's like a drainage pipe there that has a creek running under there, and it can depend on how stiff your suspension is. It hits that bump, and it definitely makes the car. It can make the car oversteer, understeer, depending on your setup in your car. And like trying to watch some of the formula cars or open wheel cars go through that section, it's very interesting because some of them are so stiff. They do a weird bounce, they start sliding, but the drivers usually catch them. So it's just kind of interesting to see the different types of cars that go through there, and how, depend on their setup and weight and all that stuff, how the suspension system reacts over the same bump.
So it is your home track. Would you say that's your favorite track to race your Evo at?
Yeah, definitely. Blackhawk Farms here in South Beloit. We do venture out as much as I can nowadays with my health and family and work obligations and stuff. But definitely my favorite because I can be from my shop at the track in about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And usually when we go out, further away from the house, we have to pack half the shop with us with parts and tools and all kinds of stuff. Versus here, if something's wrong, we bring the basics, but if something bigger is wrong, I can send somebody down to steal a part off the other Evo or just grab a spare or whatever the case might be.
Well, Mike, earlier you talked about upgrading the brake pads, and it kept the brake bait from really taking time off the lap. How do you manage that tire wear and that brake bait across multiple sessions in this high-speed operations?
So the standing starts, there's not that big of an issue with that because we do, like I said, standing start. You go do a full lap as fast as you can, and then you kind of, once you get through the finish, you do a cool down lap and come in and make your adjustments and all that fun stuff, and then you wait for your group to be called up again to grid and do it again. The issue is in the morning sessions where they give you 15, 20-minute practice sessions, and I've seen stock Evos come out there, and you'd think, Evo's got Brembos and it's all great. I've seen people with stock Brembos in 3 laps lose their brakes, and the pedal just goes down the floor. So the main thing is, if you're out there road racing, and even on upgraded lines and pads and fluid, you can still lose your brakes. So if you start feeling the pedals going down and start kind of become mush, then start coasting, start lifting. You need some air to get through there and try to cool your system. And if you just keep on doing it until your pedal goes to the floor, well, now you might have a problem. We had a gentleman in a Corvette that went off at turn 7, and usually that's straightaway before turn 7. You're doing, depending on the car, anywhere from 110 to 135 miles an hour, and he went so far off into turn 7. Luckily, there's no trees there, but he was out in the swamp, and we had to grab a tractor at the end of the day and pull him out.
Are you tired of YouTube channels that are like one big commercial, constantly building different cars, weekly or even daily videos? What about those car giveaways? No thanks. If you said yes to any of those questions, head over to youtube.com/CSMTV1320. At CSMTV, you'll see us race, fix, and build all the junk, Colt, Summit, and Mirages your heart desires. And if you're lucky, we'll even work on some other Mitsubishis. And don't worry, we won't overload your feed with videos. Only doing 1 or 2 uploads a month, you'll have plenty of time to work on your own junk DSM or Mitsubishi. Don't like sponsored ads? No problem. Only having tens of people watch our videos means we don't have any sponsors. Car giveaways? No way. We barely have enough funds to keep our own turds on the road. So come check out CSM TV on YouTube if you like making poor financial decisions. Once again, that's youtube.com/CSMTV1320.
Well, I mean, let's stick on that theme. Mike, have you ever had like a scary moment or even a mechanical failure mid-lap?
Had 2 last year. Last year was just kind of an interesting year. I really didn't want to switch over to Evo 8.9 rear diff. I kind of wanted to retain the Evo 10 rear, but it just proved to be too weak. I think I went through 3 or 4 rear diffs before I finally got pissed off and put a built rear diff out of an Evo 8 or 9, whatever my rally buddy built for me. And I did a standing start. I was banging gears halfway through the lap. I'm hearing some weird grinding and kind of sounds like a carrier bearing going out type of noise. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And I still finished the lap. I was maybe 10 seconds off the pace. And luckily, I didn't go too fast down the front straightaway, and the rear diff just locked up. And yeah, that wasn't fun. So that's why I ended up changing that. And then last year, I had the oil cooler line basically break. It separated. There's a crappy video somewhere I can send you of that from the car behind. Basically, I launched first, second, I grabbed third, And I'm not, when you're launching doing these standing starts, you're not looking in the mirror. You're focusing forward to get that first corner braking zone and entry correct. So I'm grabbing third and somewhere, towards the top end of RPMs in third gear, my cabin started getting smoke. And so my first initial thought is it could be fire because I use, E85, I use VPX 85. And even though I do have a fire suit and all the fire gear, it's not something you want to be sitting in there, sitting duck in a car that's burning. So I slowly apply the brakes, and as soon as I did that, the car pitched violently sideways. So I knew there's some kind of petroleum-based fluid that's being thrown around. And I catch the slide, and as soon as I get to the edge of the track, because of course I want to not oil up the whole track, and the oil pressure light comes on, so I shut off the car and all that. And we didn't know what it was. I run AMSOIL Dominator, so it's reddish color. So everybody's telling me it's trans or rear diff, and I'm thinking it's motor. And luckily, it just ended up being a line. I ended up saving the motor by quickly turning it off. But a quick situation that could have been much different. Because usually down that front straightaway, I'm doing 130 plus. So imagine if that would have broken then.
Sure.
Top of fifth gear or something or whatever, or fourth gear versus just third gear. So it could have definitely ended up different. I had lots of luck there. And the only damage really was, the oil line, some oil, and I think it was $250 or $300 worth of oil dry and about an hour downtime on the track. So very, very fortunate. That's the thing about motorsports. Things don't always go as planned, and I'm not afraid to say that, like some of the other people out there that only post stuff on Instagram or Facebook or any social media when things are going good, and we'll post the negative things. That's part of racing. There's positives, there's negatives. Stuff will break. It's part of the game.
And thank God you knew to act quick. That could have got real ugly real fast.
Yeah, everybody thought I destroyed the motor, but luckily I think the car has 6 quarts, 6.5, and probably 5.5 of it ended up. And this was very quick. I mean, within maybe 5-6 seconds, all that oil dumped out and I was sideways. And like I said, I'll send you the video. It's not the greatest because it is from the car from behind, but it happened so quickly. So I'm glad I didn't have to pull the motor apart and rebuild it.
Sure. So, Mike, how would you say that the competition level in high-speed autocross or time attack influences your development as a driver?
I would say in a good way. We all started here kind of a couple of years ago. There's a local club that I helped build up called Sports Car Club of Rockford, and then we have a sister club in Madison. And when we first started with the low-speed autocross program, we kind of use that as a stepping stone. We see who's quick, and then we kind of try to get them to come out to the big track. And at the start, there were some promising drivers, but we all kind of in the last 3-4 years developed each other. Kind of helped each other step up. Step our game up, not just with cars, but we're driver coaching and comparing constantly data and looking at footage and. Some of these guys, some of these heavy hitter guys are racing national events and doing really well, whether that be with NASA, CCA, or Grid Life. And it's really nice because these are the same people that we started together here locally, and they're out there competing at national level and placing really well. And that's all not because we were kind of we put our ego aside. Yeah, do we give each other crap? Yes, 100%. But at the end of the day, we were helping each other out to become better drivers, go faster, and achieve our goals at the end of the day.
Sure. Sounds like a lot was learned from that experience.
Yeah, definitely is. There's, at the height of this club, we had 100 members, and I would say, one year we had probably 61% of all the championships at this high-speed autocross / time attack stuff go to our club. Those are all members that we pulled in one shape or another. We coached, and a lot of them still race, like I said, with all different clubs. We have an older gentleman that he goes out to Porsche Club events and all kinds of stuff, and he's winning events left and right. And it's nice that it's something that you kind of helped out with, and you kind of were involved with.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Mike, speaking, staying on that topic, how would one get into, this high-speed autocross or time attack with no experience?
You can, like I said, I think the cheapest way to get in would be the low-speed autocross, which is anywhere from $40-50 for an event. If that's not your thing and you want to start out with the track day, that's totally fine. Midwestern Council, the governing body kind of organization that I run with, they host a free indoor school each, I believe, March. And then they have a paid driver school in April. But if you think you don't need any of that, just come out to an event. An event's usually about $220, $250 for the full day. There's other organizations, like mentioned before, Grid Life, NASA, and SCCA, and there's Track Time of America. And, I mean, there's dozens of different events throughout many different tracks in the Midwest. And I think the best, easiest way to find them would be through Motorsports Reg. And just go out there, and participate. Like I said, the cheapest way to go quick is seat time. That's something that you cannot buy. That's something you just have to get your butt in the car and just kind of go and experience it. There are simulators. Are they cool and good to learn a layout on a track? Yes. But, as good as those simulators are, nothing's going to beat just the feeling when you're in the car, the adrenaline. If you have a race seat, your behind's going to feel the car sliding around. It's just something that you're not going to feel in the simulator. And you just, you got to go out there and experience it for yourself.
Well, Mike, in your opinion, what makes the Evo 10 such a strong platform for road racing as a whole when you compare it to, either the older generation Evos or just other all-wheel drive?
So I've had my fair share of Subarus, and don't get me wrong, I love Subarus. But I also know that the Mitsubishis are with less money, quicker, and more reliable. People can hate me for saying that, but I've owned multiple, and I've raced WRX, and I've had a couple STIs, and multiple Subarus. Love them. They're great daily cars, but they have their own unique set of problems. With the Evo 10, the biggest thing was I kind of bought the Civic as a project car. It was running, it was driving, but there's so many problems with it. I ended up replacing every wire, everything, and I didn't really want to buy an Evo at the time. All the 8.9s, people clapped them out. I don't know if I'd say riced them out, but they modded them out, and you're ultimately a lot of times inheriting somebody else's headache.
Right.
So I couldn't find, anything reasonable. So I ended up seeing the Evo 10s, a lot of them were for sale, brand new. So I bit the bullet and bought an Evo 10 MR. And in my opinion, yeah, is it heavier than the 8.9s to begin with? Yes. The 4B11 is a great motor. The 4G63 fanboys, will tell you otherwise. That argument is as old as, as old as dirt, basically, and you can go back and forth. But there's been, over time, many people that prove that the 4B11 can make just as much power. Torque is enemy of both engines, rods, stock bottom ends, whatever. But the thing that, in my opinion, for road racing, the Evo 10 is better than the 8.9s when you're starting out. It's got the AYC, the active yaw control, and the super all-wheel drive control, I think they call it, Mitsubishi. And when you're starting out, that stuff is great. You can turn most of that stuff off, all the aids, all that stuff, to help you rotate the car once you get familiar. Because the biggest problem with people that are inexperienced is when they get in an all-wheel drive car, usually in order for you, if you're sliding an all-wheel drive car, you point and shoot, floor it, and the all-wheel drive system will basically straighten you out. You'll see a lot of times people get in all-wheel drive cars and they panic, they start sliding, they lift or hit the brakes and they spin out or hit things. So that's why the Evo 10, kind of, in my opinion, as being new to the all-wheel drive platform, I think the all-wheel drive system, for at least what's available here in the U.S., I think the 10 is better, superior. But yes, you got to deal with extra weight, which, if we compare to a friend of mine, his road racing Evo 8 to mine that's gutted now fully, we're not far apart weight-wise.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we weighed the car, of course, without me in it at 29.96, and that's with either half a tank or three-quarters of a tank.
That's pretty. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, they are heavier. I know you can make an Evo 8.9 lighter, but that isn't like also all completely extreme. There's still stuff that can be taken out. But most of your comforts things and amenities like radio and AC, that's obviously long gone.
So among the Evo 10 or even the Evo community as a whole, how do you feel like road racing focused cars are treated by the community?
Yeah, it's something that I'd say majority of people just don't care for, unfortunately. Drag racing is, the thing that everybody flocks to, and that's fine. I've been wanting to check out the Mitsubishi Shootout, the autocross section. I wish it was a little bit bigger and stuff, or got a little bit more support, but again, it's not my event. I don't want to sound like I'm talking negative. Far from it. I've been wanting to check it out. It's just hasn't aligned with my schedule and stuff like that. But most people, in my opinion, want to do street pulls, roll racing with Evos, do drag racing, and the little bit of us that do the road racing or the autocross. It's kind of like the outcast of the group. Doesn't get much, I don't know if I'd want to call it support, but it's just kind of like, oh, cool, yeah, it's road racing, whatever. Yeah,
Right.
and that's fine. I'm not doing this to, get fanboys or clicks or likes. I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and whether people watch me or not, or I have whatever followers on whatever platform, I really could care less. It's something that makes me happy. I enjoy doing it, and the people that I meet through there are great friends, and the ones that don't like it, cool, it is what it is.
Doing it for you.
Exactly.
Well, Mike, if I have an Evo 10 and I'm looking to build it for road racing, what advice would you give me for my build so that I make sure that I'm going along the right path? Don't make maybe some of the mistakes that you made.
All depends obviously on budget, but a lot of people think you gotta, be super rich to go out and do it. Again, the cheapest mod is seat time, and then after that, I would look at getting good tires. I've had a gentleman that came in and tried to track an Evo, and he wasn't a bad driver, but he had some cheap Walmart tires on there, and that's just, nothing against Walmart tires. They might be good for daily driving or get you around town, but they're not performance tires. They're not, they're not gonna get you. They're not gonna be able to pull out all the potential of the car. So good tires are definitely a must. And then after that, I would probably do some aggressive pads, braided lines, and racing fluid. The Brembos are actually still stock rotors and calipers on my car, and it's doing well. And after that, if you think after those basic things, if you think you're ready for more power, do your full bolt-ons and get a good tune, whether you want to run 91 or E85, depending on, what is available in your part of the country. And the only other thing, what I would suggest is the big problem that I noticed and it depends on the track, but what I've noticed on the Evo 10s, they have a fuel starvation problem, so a surge tank is definitely a must. If you're running stock power levels, as long as you're not dropping below half a tank, you should be okay. Again, depending on the track, elevation changes, stuff like that, G-forces, but to be safe, a surge tank is a must. And then, just depend on how far you want to take it,
Well, Mike, what's the next big goal with the car?
So we're trying to There's a lap record in the class I'm currently running. It's called Street Unlimited. It's about 4/10 off from my personal best, which I set was it last month, and that was on 3-year-old used tires. We're saving the nice new tires for the big national competition that we're going to. So we're just gonna try to put a fresh set of tires on and try to tweak the suspension a little bit, and just kind of play with the setup. I think the car is okay where it's at. Maybe down the pipeline, we'd like to run a bigger front splitter. We were running a smaller one to test for the Big King of the Mountain competition. That's a faster autocross style shootout, and I think the prize pot's 25,000 or something like that.
Oh wow!
So with that in mind, the front splitter you can't be putting anything crazy on, like the one we're trying to build for the car. It's supposed to stick out about a foot in the front of the car, a foot on the sides. If you have that for an autocross, you're gonna just plow all the cones. That doesn't work, obviously. So that's kind of what we were testing the last event. So in the future, we want to kind of change that over and then maybe upgrade the front sway bar. And like I said, just little things. I'm pretty happy with how the car is doing, but there's small tweaks that we can figure out. I do want to try to maybe run 295 wide tires on all 4 corners, obviously. But like I said, I'm very happy. There's a couple small spots where the turbo is a little bit laggy, and so I think if I can carry a little bit more speed, so playing with aerodynamics, we can try to, if we carry more speed, there should be a little bit less lag. And ultimately, if we don't get the lap record, then we would be looking at maybe changing gear ratios in the transmission, as on that lap or on that track, there's 2 sections, 2 straightaways where I have to touch 5th. And we all know that 5th gear on an Evo 10, it just, 3rd and 4th pull like a freight train, and then 5th, it just kind of falls on its face, it bogs down. So, just something that we might look into in the future if that lap record doesn't fall.
Sure. That's pretty cool to shoot for.
Yeah, we're not far away. It's within sight.
Right. Well, are there any future mods to go along with this that are in the pipeline that you're just waiting on?
Just like I said, little things, aero stuff. Most everything is good. I think the thing over the winter we want to focus on is getting the motor together for the MR, because I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years now that it's been down, just busy and haven't had time. And then I have Evo 9 project and 8 as well, so there's definitely too many things here around in the shop. We're doing my buddy's Evo wagon swap, so it's just there's so much stuff, and he's got a Evo 8 wide body that we're working on. Just a lot of things going on. So until the setup's not working, we're just gonna change very, very minimal.
Mm-hmm. Well, long term, Mike, do you see yourself sticking with this type of racing, or do you want to branch out and try other things?
Yeah, definitely would like to. This is local. Like I said, the biggest problem was kind of I had some health issues, so I couldn't really travel, go to national events and all that stuff. And then obviously I have a 3-year-old now, so you kind of try to balance your hobby with work and family and stuff. Because for those people that don't have kids, they don't understand, but the ones that do, they do grow up fast. So enjoy while they're young and little. You gotta spend some time with them. But I'd like to try maybe a couple national events, and maybe even try to do wheel-to-wheel like competition racing.
Mm.
But that would have to be a completely different either Evo or something else. Because the Evo currently definitely couldn't do 30-minute sprint races. It would just get too hot, and it definitely run out of fuel as well. Car is very thirsty on that VPX 85. Makes good power, but you can literally just watch the gas gauge go down. So I don't think it would do too well. We'd probably have to stop halfway through the race to refuel.
That is thirsty.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Mike, what events can we see you and this car in action in 2025?
So the next event, we're going to Madison Speedway for an autocross the 20th of July, just to kind of shake things down and kind of test a couple little things for that King of the Mountain event. Then we have a high-speed autocross event. That's the second round for the Midwestern Council Championship at Blackhawk Farms. That is, I think, the following weekend in July. And then in August, we plan on going to UMI King of the Mountain at UMI Motorsports Park in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, and that is basically, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's basically a invite-only competition. 125 of the best drivers in North America get an invite, and then it's a you have to qualify. Basically, I think on a Friday you qualify to go into the shootout. The 48 fastest drivers, fight out for top spot, and I think first place gets $10,000, $3,000 for first in class, $10,000 for overall winner. And so I'm really happy and honored to have gotten an invite 2 years in a row. We're supposed to go last year. We didn't make it. Wife got in a car accident, all that fun stuff, so I couldn't leave her. And then the following weekend in August, last weekend of August, we are at Milwaukee Mile, where we're going to try to take down 2 lap records in 2 different classes.
Oh, wow.
And October 18th and 19th, we will be at Blackhawk Farms Raceway for probably the last event of the season up here in northern Illinois. That time of the year, it's already kind of starting to rain. Haven't seen snow that late or that early, but we've seen snow at the driver's school before in April, so you never know.
Wow. Getting into some ice racing real quick.
Well, not really, because a lot of these cars for sprint races run Hoosiers. So, we have pictures where, these students are there to try to get their competition license, and some of these cars, people have open cockpit cars, and then it snows an inch or two, and think about it, these cars don't have any kind of heater, defrost, or any of that stuff, and you're sitting in a race suit in a car with no windows, and you're basically just freezing. It's not every year that happens. I think in the last 10 years it only happened once, but nevertheless it did happen. And it's a racetrack. You're not going to be plowing the track or putting salt down. So basically that day is a washout.
Well, Mike, I know you said earlier you're not a huge fan of social media or you're not looking for following. But if anybody wanted to follow you, where could they find and follow you on social media?
I am on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can look me up by first and last name or Valentic Motorsports. Come say hi or whatever. I usually stay in touch with some friends in Europe through that way. But again, I'm not good at making videos or any of that fun stuff. I'm not a YouTuber. I never claim to be. So I don't make content. So I try not to stick my nose places where it doesn't belong. I leave that to the pros.
Understand that. Well, Mike, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them out along the way. Anybody who's helped the car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, certainly. I appreciate that. I want to give a huge thank you to Devin and the whole team at Boosted Performance, Andre and Adam and the rest of the team at RCA Garage. They're the ones that corner balance and align my car. Last time I was there the whole day until we got the setup just perfect. I know it can get annoying and frustrating, but I appreciate all their help. Bart Hockerman with anti-gravity batteries, Pro Car Innovations, Professional Awesome, Morrison Fabrication, Chris with SpeedParts.biz, Crazy Joe's Rap, and a good friend of mine, Jordan Martin. You guys can check out his Instagram. He's got some of the world's quickest cars. He's a big drag racer at Drivewire. Brian from Prank Cuts Chop Shop. Buddy Cameron with Hermes Photography. Ian with Optimized Performance. And Sergey Abramov. He's the guy that parts out Evos on the East Coast. So if anybody needs Evo 10 parts, he's the guy that'll have it. And Danielle, who's my right-hand man, my mechanic, he helps me at the track and countless days and favors and help all the time. Obviously, my wife and family. Amanda, Jason, Dennis, Richard Knievel, Jeff Vance, Adam, and all the other friends, competitors, and everybody else that helped me throughout the years. There's just too many to list. I'm definitely in debt to these people that came out and helped, and that's what I like about road racing because you might catch crap from people helping you, but at the end of the day, all those people will take their shirt off their back to help you out. It's definitely a good community.
Good stuff. Well, Mike, thank you again for coming on here and sharing your story. And I definitely can't wait to see some updates from you. And best of luck at the King of the Mountain. I know Evos have had some luck up there, so I hope you can keep it home for the Mitsubishi boys.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And like I said, when we were texting back and forth, maybe if you are in the area sometime, we can have you come over the shop and check that out. And I'll give you a little tour and stuff like that. There's always some interesting stuff there, not just necessarily Mitsubishi stuff, but we do have a road racing Ferrari and some other stuff, some Datsuns and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I got to catch this car in action too. I wrote down everything, all the events that you said. I'm gonna start working on some plans to at least get to one of them.
Yeah, appreciate it. Keep in touch, and if not, then maybe if you go out to PRI, definitely get in touch, and we'll come say hi to each other.
Sure. Well, Mike, thanks again, man, and like I said, I'll be in touch.
Thank you, sir. Likewise, you have a good one.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.